Okay, repairs are made on this P51D 750mm. This is the plug-and-fly version, so there's no gyro. It's manual mode only. Alright, so I've got my timer set for 4 minutes. I haven't flown this in over a year. I just repaired it. And I'm going to try and launch it by the wingtip. See how that works out. Let's see if it will actually fly. Let's see if I did good or bad. Oh man, do I need some expo on that. It is climbing like crazy. Wow, that is just uncontrollable. What the heck is going on? Wow, if I can get this back on the ground, I'm going to be doing good. Yeah, how about that? I wondered if that thrust line was going to cause a huge problem. And it looks like it is. Well, it really bent the landing gear on it. And I'm going to take the tail weight off of it. That seemed like it was extremely tail heavy, but it's been over a year since I've flown it, and according to the documentation, that was the correct CG. Alright, let's try it again. Let's see what we've got. Looked like all I did was bend the landing gear. And it's 4 to 7 out here right now. Alright, let's try it again. Well, that is definitely better, but it's still climbing. Well, looks like I'm going to have to put some more down angle in the motor. For sure. This seems to have more thrust than I thought it would too. I've got some altitude on it right now because you saw how it reacted when I first put it in the air, right? It was very tail heavy, so I took that tail weight off of it. So the CG is, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 millimeters ahead of where they specified it. At least I can control it now. That looked good. Definitely need some more expo in the ailerons. Wow. I'm going to start walking toward the road, so I'll be there when it comes time to land this plane. Awesome roll rate, at least to the left. Let's check it to the right. I'm starting to get my haptic now. Oh yeah. Definitely have an excellent roll rate, and I definitely need to put more expo in it. Yeah, okay, so we've been in the air for 4 minutes. We've gone in power for 4 minutes. Alright, so let's bring it back around and see if we can land it. Probably going to have to make another circuit because I'm not quite to the road yet. Make sure nobody's coming. Okay. Let's see if we can get it on the ground without destroying it. Oh, go around. I don't know how much battery power I've got left. It's a little twitchy on the ailerons. Oh, go around again. Nice crosswind. Get a little longer run at it. Oh man, it is just too twitchy. And let's see, do I have any damage? No, it looks good. Alright, I'm going to check everything over, check my battery voltage, see what's left in the pack, because I wasn't hitting it very hard. Put some more expo in the ailerons, and then we'll test it again. See you in a minute. Okay, I put some more down trim in it. I had 3.7 volts left in the pack once I landed, and my timer stated that I had it in the air for 5 minutes and 8 seconds because I had to do what, 3 go-arounds? Okay, so let's see what we have now. I also increased the expo in the ailerons. Wow, that takes right off. That's pretty easy launching it by the wingtip. A lot easier for me than it is underneath the fuselage. Yeah, the ailerons definitely feel more comfortable. I think maybe even a little more expo. Plenty of power. So what I'm doing is I'm compensating for that thrust angle with some down elevator. It would be a lot more stable in the air with a proper amount of down angle on the motor, and I think it's because I changed the thrust line on it. Yeah, the ailerons still feel pretty tight. Doesn't take much movement on the stick, so I think I'm going to increase the expo a little bit more. Nice power. It feels like it has more power than what my thrust testing showed on this motor and prop. Certainly feels like it's got more than a 1.3 to 1 thrust to weight ratio. Probably going to tone down the roll rate a little bit too. That'll probably help. you know, from having to put so much expo in. Because that is a tremendous roll rate on this plane. And I said it's been over a year. Look at that. It's been over a year since I have flown this plane, so I kind of forgot about the fast roll rate that it had on it. Awesome roll rate. Alright, I'm going to walk toward the road again. But man, what a difference from when I first launched it, huh? That was scary. It was just all but uncontrollable. We'll still have to see how well I can get it on the ground. I'm starting to get my haptic now. But plenty of power. Seems pretty stable. Like I said, it would be more stable. I've got, if I could put more down trim in that motor. Awesome looking P51D Mustang. Okay, so let's see. Let's do another circuit and see if we can bring it in and keep it on the road this time. I hope. That was better. Woo, rocks. Okay. I'm glad I got this lined out before I absolutely destroyed it. I didn't know what was going to happen when I first launched this plane. That was an absolute handful on that first launch. I am really surprised I didn't completely tear it up trying to get it back down on the ground to figure out what was going on, but much better. I'm going to put some more flights on this plane so I get more comfortable with it. I think I am going to put it back in the air. I'm going to dial down the dual rate on the ailerons a bit rather than increasing the expo, and see how that feels, because that is just a tremendous roll rate. I think it's actually a little bit too fast. So I'll see you back at the hangar, and I'll go over what I think is how this plane crashed the first time, what I think the problem was, the change in the thrust line that I made. It was kind of unavoidable, and why I think I need more down angle in the motor. So I'll see you back at the hangar.
Alright, was that a wild ride right off the bat or what? I have had very few planes up in the air that were that uncontrollable right off the bat. And the reason that it was way out of whack on that first launch, and I should have realized some of it. But I had my CG set in the stock position, which is basically right on the wing spar. So in order to do that, in order to get this to balance neutrally on the wing spar, because I have a much heavier battery in it and I have a much heavier speed controller than the stock one that came with it. So I'm using a GNB 3S 550 milliamp hour LiPo instead of the stock 2S power system that it came with. I've got a 3S power system on it. Instead of the small, lightweight 10 amp speed controller they had in it, I've got a Hobbywing Skywalker 20 amp speed controller in it. So I should have guessed that that was going to change my CG significantly, especially since I had to redo the motor mount as well, and my thrust angle is a little bit different than stock. So I had, when I first launched it, I had 11 grams of tail weight all the way back where the tail wheel is, in order to get this to balance neutrally on the stock CG, which made it tremendously tail heavy. That plus the fact that I had way too much aileron in it and way too little expo, I couldn't even keep it level. Every time I would hit the aileron stick, I mean, it would go hard left or go hard right. I couldn't even get it to center up. That plus the fact that it was extremely tail heavy. I was very lucky with that type of condition to get this back on the ground in one piece. And the only thing that happened was it bent one of the landing gear back. So I just bent it forward and made my adjustments and went on. But three things have changed my CG on this plane from the stock CG. One is the thrust angle and the thrust line. When I installed this motor, after replacing the plastic motor mount was just all busted up. I couldn't use it. So I glued in a piece of 3mm thick hobby grade plywood. I wanted to use my X mount with my Racerstar 2208 1400 kV motor. Well, because of the curvature of the fuselage, I couldn't get the X mount positioned up to where the motor would be centered in this, you know, the circular area of the cowling. It's actually about 3 to 4 millimeters lower than it was stock. I also think, looking at it, I think the motor is seated further back into the nose section than the stock motor was. So that changes the weight distribution. And then, you know, the battery compartment is pretty far forward of the stock CG, and instead of using the 2S LiPo, I've got a 3S LiPo in it. And then right behind the battery compartment is where the ESC is, and it's bigger and heavier than the stock one. So I didn't need all that tail weight to offset this, because with the difference in the thrust line on the plane being lower, it's not going to pull the nose down as much. So not only was it tail heavy, but because the thrust line is different on the motor, it's not pulling the nose down like it was before. So my CG, and I measured this after I got back, where I was getting it, after I removed the tail weight, put a little bit of down trim in the elevator, because I actually had positive trim on the elevator as well, which just exacerbated the problem. But I tested the CG with a neutral balance, and my CG is a full 12 millimeters forward of where the stock CG is. So one of the things I was thinking about flying it out there was, okay, one of the problems is the thrust angle, the thrust line on the motor, and since I changed the thrust line on the motor, I'm going to need more down angle on the motor. Well, I put all 6 of my battery packs to it while I had it out there, and I've got it locked in pretty well. I've still got some trimming, some fine tuning on the trim to do, but the balance feels really, really good, and it seems really, really stable. So I think after making my adjustments to the plane, now I'm thinking I'm not going to have to change the thrust angle on this at all. With the weight that I have on the plane, that's where it seems to like the CG. And once I balance it at that point and get the proper trim into my elevator, it seems to maintain its altitude very straight and level at cruising speed with no problem. I was really surprised at how much power it demonstrated, especially after I took the additional 11 grams of weight off of the tail, making the all-up weight on the plane 11 grams lighter. So now the all-up weight on the plane, the way I'm flying it, is right at between 270, 271 grams all-up weight. Flying the way that I fly, and I always try to get my power systems set up so that I can get a minimum of 5 minutes of flying with it the way that I fly. So I'm cruising part of the time, and I'm hard in the throttle doing aerobatics part of the time. So I set my timer on one of the flights for 5 minutes, flew it around. When I landed, I still had about 3.7 volts per cell. So the way I fly, I should be able to get between 5.5 to 6 minutes of flight time with that little 3S 550 milliamp hour LiPo. And that's the biggest LiPo that I could fit in that battery bay. So it's not as much flight time as I would like to get. I could cut down on the power, you know, the amp draw by putting a smaller prop on it, but then it wouldn't have nearly as much power. So it's always kind of a trade-off. I like the performance that I'm seeing out of the plane with the way I've got it set up now. I like that, the amount of power it has. I like it a lot. It's by reducing the plane by 11 grams, it's almost a 1.4 to 1 thrust to weight ratio, and it performs very well. And you can still slow it down pretty well, even though it's 270 grams all up weight. So it feels really good in the air at that weight too. It feels pretty locked in, not real floaty. So I like it. It performs aerobatics without any problem. You can slow it down pretty good without any problem. I haven't seen any bad tendencies out of it after I got through my 5th and 6th battery pack with the adjustments I made. All I have left to do now is some trim work, and I think this plane will be flying again just the way I want it to. So I was very lucky that I didn't destroy this plane the way it handled when I launched it the first time. So that's awesome. So stay tuned. I'm gonna take this out for another flight session to get it all completely tuned out, and then I'll post some fun aerobatic flights with it. Absolutely gorgeous airframe. I love the look of this P51D. Links to that will be in the show notes. I'll put links to the motor, the prop, everything that I'm using on this system right now. And as soon as I get everything tuned and flying exactly how I want, I will post the setup file and my model file. But be aware that if yours is stock, your CG is going to be much different than what mine is. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.